Good morning. Sony Pictures now saying that it is actively looking for an alternative way to distribute the movie The Interview, other than in theaters. It pulled distribution ahead of its Christmas Day opening following hacked emails and a terror threat the FBI has linked to North Korea. Congressman Peter King is a member of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence and the Committee on Homeland Security. Congressman, we will get to Sony in a moment. Good morning to you. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
But I want to kick it off, of course, talking about this horrific story breaking here in New York, the execution-style shooting of 2 police officers yesterday in Brooklyn. You made a statement, Congressman, about needing to get together as a country and support our police. Tell us what you'd like to see happen.
Yeah, Maria, first of all, thank you for having me on. And this is an absolute tragedy, what occurred in New York. And it's time for our national leaders, the president, it's time for the mayor of New York, and really for many in the media to stop the cop bashing, to stop this anti-police rhetoric. I mean, for the last 4 months, we've basically heard nothing other than the cops are guilty. You presume cops are guilty. Then the grand jury says they are not going to be indicted. People demonstrate and march in the streets. And it's so slanted. For instance, the case in Staten Island, it's supposed to be racial. As tragic as that was, the fact is it was an African-American chief of the police department who sent in the police officers at the request of minority business owners. The top-ranking police officer at the scene was an African-American female sergeant, and yet that didn't stop Al Sharpton and others from demonstrating. Mayor de Blasio says if we have any evidence at all, of any indication that police are going to be attacked, to let him know. Well, the fact is, last week, there were thousands of demonstrators. Earlier this week, there were thousands of demonstrators chanting they wanted dead cops. They wanted dead cops now.
Right.
The mayor never denounced that. And then you had people attacking the cops on the Brooklyn Bridge, and the mayor referred to them as an alleged assault, something which he never said in Staten Island or Ferguson.
Well, I mean, you know, the mayor has been supporting Al Sharpton. In your statement, you said our national, state, and local leaders should stop elevating people like Al Sharpton. What would you like to see done?
Well, first of all, rather than having Al Sharpton to the White House to discuss race relations, I think it would be very appropriate for the president to have the families of police officers who have been killed, or to have cops down there who actually work in the streets, who work in the rough neighborhoods, who know what it's like, to get their side of the story. The president's idea of a conversation is to find out how we can make the cops better, assuming that the cops are wrong to begin with. And it's that type of a mood that's being created, which creates a climate where you can have madmen, and assuming this guy was a madman, carry out these crimes. He came from Baltimore to New York to kill 2 New York City cops. Why? Because of all the rhetoric that's out there, because of the climate that's been created where it's considered perfectly appropriate for thousands of people to demonstrate, calling cops murderers and killers after a grand jury says that the police officer was not guilty.
Well, there's clearly a lot of upset and certainly rage, Congressman, on both sides here. How do you then respond to the people who are upset by the recent decisions after murders of black boys who were not doing anything wrong?
Well, in fact, the grand jury found that they were, certainly in the case in Ferguson, where Michael Brown, the grand jury found, was coming at the police officer. First, he had held up a convenience store. Then he tried to take away the police officer's gun, and then he was coming after him. So that, to me, is not some innocent kid. And in Staten Island, we had a person, and he never should have been killed. That was a tragic accident, and 99 out of 100 times, he wouldn't have been hurt at all. But the fact is, he was arrested 30 times before. He was resisting arrest, and the job of the police was to take him down. But I would think, by the way, all this, like all these athletic teams, the NFL and the NBA and college basketball teams who are wearing the shirts, denouncing the cops or supporting Michael Brown and supporting Eric Garner, I would say this week is a show of respect. Why don't they wear shirts defending the NYPD as a sign of solidarity for 2 police officers who were killed in the prime of life? They were assassinated in a tragic assassination and murder, which takes us back to the 1970s. My father was a cop then. I remember that whole period, how terrible it was, how tough it was, and there's no reason we should go back to it. I thought we'd gotten beyond that, but the rhetoric today, unfortunately, I think is creating a climate which is bringing back the 1970s.
Well, once again, the country is desperate for leadership and desperate for somebody or something to bring us together. How can we come together, Congressman?
I would say if the president and the mayor and others would tone down the rhetoric, if they would not assume that the cop is guilty from day one, and if they could have a real debate, not have people like Al Sharpton at the meeting, but having intelligent people on both sides, having people who understand what the police officers are going through, and have people from the minority communities who feel that there are problems that have to be addressed, fine, I'm sure there are. Get people together, but don't do it from the position that you assume the cops are guilty to begin with. And that to me is the worst, because it's, when you have Mayor de Blasio talking about how he has to tell his son to look out for cops, well, maybe if he told his son to respect cops, he wouldn't have the same problem.
Congressman, there's a lot to talk about with you this morning. We want to get more on our other top story of the morning, and that is that massive cyber attack on Sony Pictures. Stay with us, Congressman Peter King. We want to look at the reaction here, North Korea's role, and what to do moving forward. Fox News senior correspondent Eric Shawn on that angle. Eric, good morning to you.
Good morning, Maria, and good morning, everyone. It's called a foreign terrorist attack against America. North Korea did not need to launch a missile, detonate a bomb, or send a phalanx of goose-stepping troops to invade California. They apparently did it with a click of the mouse.
I have a gift for you.
Oh, this dog is killing me with cuteness.
He's a crazy cute.
Well, the challenge goes far beyond that of a comedy, but a question of whether our country or corporations and ourselves are properly protected against a devastating cyber attack. The apparent North Korean incursion could show just how easy it would be for an enemy of America, like the North Korean regime, to strike at the very heart of our nation, targeting our computers that run the energy grid, banking, the very foundations of our everyday existence.
We've been coordinating with the private sector, but a lot more needs to be done. We're not even close to where we need to be.
Well, the North Koreans deny they did it and say they want to work with Washington, warning, quote, if the U.S. refuses to accept our proposal for a joint investigation and continues to talk about some kind of response by dragging us into the case, it must remember there will be grave consequences. But others say the U.S. should respond against North Korea by launching a new version of the Stuxnet virus, the computer malware that was used to infect and damage the Iranian nuclear program.
They're finding out how to get into our infrastructure, military, commercial, industrial, the civilian sector, even on the private level. So somehow the United States needs to stand up, send a clear message to North Korea at the same time, telling everybody else, you mess with us in the cyber world, we're going to mess with you.
And there are demands to put North Korea back on the State Department list of state sponsors of terrorism. Well, in an interview aired this morning, the president dialed back the concern, saying the attack, in his words, was not an act of war, but of cyber vandalism. So he promises what he calls a proportional response. Perhaps another way to answer Kim Jong-un would be to do what he seemingly tried to prevent. Let's all watch the movie. Maria?
Oh, gosh. Eric, thank you very much. Eric Shawn, more now with Congressman Peter King. Congressman, the president said that what North Korea did was not an act of war, but an act of cyber vandalism. Do you agree with that?
No, it's to use a word like vandalism is to trivialize an issue such as this. I mean, this was a dramatic turning point in our relations with the world. I mean, the fact that North Korea could carry out a cyber attack such as this, could bring the movie industry to its knees, is just an indication of what can be done. And for the president to call this vandalism, again, it's just such a trivializing, petty description of what really was an assault on our national liberty, our national sovereignty.
Well, let me ask you.
He's got to soften that up.
Let me ask you this, Congressman, because I have actually been speaking with a number of sources inside Sony and around Sony, and they are very upset with the president. They say basically they called the White House several times and they did not get a call back. They said that the FBI was great. They worked with the FBI and they did a terrific job. But for the president to come out and say, oh, I'm disappointed that they canceled the movie, they should have called me, when in fact a number of executives have told me they did reach out and he didn't call them back. Why was there no response from government when we knew that North Korea said if you go to this movie you will face a 9/11-like attack? Doesn't that warrant an answer from government?
Yeah, in fact, in fairness, I don't know what went on between Sony and the president. Having said that, it was the obligation of the president of the United States to meet with Sony to have the The Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, all the resources of the federal government should have been working with Sony, made this a major effort. From the moment this threat first emerged, the president, as the leader, as the commander-in-chief, had the obligation to lead our offensive against this, and not just to sit back and after the fact criticize them. And it's not enough to have people under him speaking to maybe people in the industry. This required a major effort by the president, Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, all of our law enforcement efforts around the country. For instance, to work with local law enforcement to see the level of protection they can provide, to see if there is any threat, and also to be immediately working on what kind of counteroffensive we can carry out about North Korea. So listen, I have no great brief for the Hollywood people. Having said that, if they were left out there on their own and for the president to criticize them afterwards, that's wrong. But apart from that, he should have been out front early, and he should have been mobilizing all our resources against North Korea on this, and protecting Sony, and protecting the industry, and protecting the United States.
Well, I would think so, particularly with those words that they use, that there will be a 9/11-like attack. I mean, that's pretty aggressive. So what's the plan now, Congressman? We're getting taunted again. The North Koreans are saying if this continues, there will be grave consequences. So what's the U.S.'s plan?
Again, I certainly can't speak for the president, but I would say what the president should be doing right now is telling North Korea this is not going to be tolerated. But in addition to that, I don't think North Korea could have done this without at least the tacit approval of China. And we have to let China know we're not going to tolerate this either. We have leverage we can use against China. We have some leverage against North Korea. At the very least, I think they should be put back on the terrorist list. They are clearly, to me, a state sponsor of terrorism. They should be on that list. And we should, whatever economic leverage we have as far as cyber, we should attack them cyber-wise. But also, I think we have to realize that China has to have an involvement here. And we can't let China just walk away from this and make believe that they're just innocent bystanders, which they're not.
So what's China's involvement then?
I don't see how North Korea could have done this without using facilities in China. I don't think North Korea itself has the capability within the country of North Korea itself. They have to have platforms or other facilities in China that are being used. And also, they really can't carry out very much of this without some tacit approval from China.
All right, Congressman, good to have you on the program. We'll be watching the developments. Thank you very much.
Maria, thank you.
Congressman Peter King joining us.